I am Jorge Mario Bergoglio. I am not the Vicar of Christ or the successor of Peter. This is pretty much what Francis, the Bishop of Rome, just said. Welcome, Catholicos, Catholics, Orthodox Christians, all who seek the truth. So just recently, 2 days ago or 3 days ago, April 2nd, just grab my little piece of paper here. The annual yearbook was published, the Pontifical Yearbook, which lists the Pope, the bishops, patriarchs, and so forth. And in it, Jorge Bergoglio, aka Pope Francis, dropped pretty much the name of Vicar of Christ, Vicar of Jesus Christ, and Successor of Peter. Two essential traits of the successor of Peter, of the Bishop of Rome. Without being the successor of Peter, without being the Vicar of Christ, treating them as mere historical titles, not of the essence of the pontificate, then you basically deny being the successor of Peter and the Vicar of Christ. And that's basically what Francis did. So, before we go into it, because you might think, oh my God, when did that happen? It's not a surprise. Well, I'm going to read you basically quickly what happened, and you will see that this has been actually in the works from the beginning. Well, actually, before we do this one, I'm going to take a little excerpts from the LifeSite article, which is a reproduction of the German. There's a link to the German original and the pictures of the yearbook, the current yearbook 2020 as compared to the one of 2019, which is actually different than the one of 2013. Now, before we do that, I will start off with what Sandro Magister in 2013 wrote, and I'll place a link for this article so you can see it. So it says here it's about the 2013 edition of the Annuario Pontificio. So basically it's the Pontifical Yearbook. So it says here, and from Sandro Magister in 2013. So he's talking about what happened in the 2013 edition compared to the 2012 edition. Now we're talking about the 2020 edition, where Francis basically drops the title of Vicar of Jesus Christ and drops the title of Successor to the Prince of the Apostles, Peter, which is essential. It is not simply Patriarch of the West or the Sovereign of Vatican State or Primate of Italy. These are part of who he is, but they are not essential as being the Vicar of Christ or the successor of Peter, which go hand in hand. You can't be one without the other. Now, here's from Sandro Magister from 2013. He's talking about the 2012 compared to the 2013. The year Francis got elected. I'm going to read it here. The one concerned precisely the title. The main difference concerns precisely the title which Pope Francis has chosen to define himself. From the beginning of the pontificate, from the beginning of his pontificate, and my heart dropped when I saw Jorge Bergoglio on the loggia, on the balcony. I said, who is this guy? I had a horrible feeling as soon as I saw him. Anyways, so he says, from the beginning of his pontificate, that's Sandro Magister in 2013, he, Francis, has chosen to call himself, nobody's calling them, he calls himself almost exclusively Bishop of Rome. And this preference has been fully reflected in the initial part of the new Annuario, which is the Pontifical Yearbook of 2013. Actually, on the side, Francis, when he went to Fatima, called himself the bishop dressed in white. And in the vision of Fatima, the children see a bishop like in a mirror, like in a reverse image, a bishop dressed in white, which they thought looked like the Pope. Didn't say he was. Anyways, so he continues, Sandro Magister. He says, on page 23 of last edition, so 2012 Pontifical Yearbook, Benedict the 16th was indicated, so it says Benedict the 16th, not only as Bishop of Rome, but also as Vicar of Jesus Christ, Successor of the Prince of the Apostles, Supreme Pontiff of the Universal Church, Primate of Italy, Archbishop and Metropolitan of the Roman Province, Sovereign of Vatican City State, Servant of the Servants of God. This year, however, on the same page as the 2012 edition, so this year meaning 2013, is found only the wording on 2 lines. Francis, Bishop of Rome, nothing else. While on the other, while all the other titles, together with the usual brief biography notes, are on the following page. So basically on the first page, he doesn't go through all the titles, which is especially Vicar of Christ and Successor of Peter. These are essential to the pontificate. They are now on the back page. So on the front page is just simply Francis, Bishop of Rome. That's it. The back page, the new Pope has there so on the back page, page 24, are added these titles and the biography of Jorge Bergoglio. So he says here, Sandro Magister, that's in 2013, he says, the new Pope has therefore not given up any of the classical titles that belong to him, but has wanted to put them visibly in second place, as if being the Vicar of Christ and the successor to the Prince of the Apostles are not essential to the pontificate, to the Roman pontiff. So that's what 2013, and it says here, of course, it says Benedict XVI, Bishop of Rome, Successor of Peter, and so forth. And as on the 2013 one is Francis, Bishop of Rome. That's it. And on the back page, he gives all the titles. So he kind of demotes the title without denying them. That's in 2013. But look what happens. What happens in what happened now is in 2020, all of these titles have been removed, relegated to a footnote. Underneath it says historical titles, as if they have no connection with the essence of the pontificate, of being the supreme pontiff. They are just historical titles. They mean nothing. Vicar of Christ, Successor of the Prince of the Apostle. Important thing is I'm the Bishop of Rome. That's all that counts. So if you're just the Bishop of Rome, why should I care what you say? You're just a bishop among 1,000 others. I might as well listen to the Patriarch of Constantinople or the Patriarch of Antioch. He seems to have more authority than the Bishop of Rome. He's a patriarch. And on the side, Benedict XVI, again, he's just too smart for his own good. He does bad things thinking he's doing a good. He, in 2006 or something, he removed one of the titles of the Roman Pontiff, which is a very historical, one of the most ancient titles is Patriarch of the West. Because in the ancient church, there was the different patriarchates, the Patriarchate of Rome, the Patriarchate of Antioch, the Patriarchate of Alexandria, the Patriarchate of Antioch, Alexandria, Rome, Constantinople, and I think there is one more patriarchate. But anyways, 4 or 5 patriarchates. These were the essentials. They are the patriarchates, especially Rome, Alexandria, and Antioch, and Jerusalem. These are the original 4 patriarchates. So for Benedict to say, I'm not going to call myself Patriarch of the West, is a violation of ancient tradition, apostolic tradition. Some people thought, oh, this is good for the Orthodox, but actually, the Orthodox did not like. The reason being is, Benedict saying, I'm not just a patriarch, I'm the supreme pontiff, I'm the pope. So he's emphasizing the papacy over the patriarchate, which actually reduces the possibility of a reunion with the various patriarchates of the East. So this is Benedict's innovation, one of the initial before his amazing innovation in his so-called resignation, renunciation. So anyway, so now in the 20, I'm going to read you part of the article here from April 2nd, 2020 from LifeSite, which quotes verbatim basically the article in the German newspapers. And here it is. Pope Francis has dropped the historic essential title Vicar of Christ from the 2020 Pontifical Yearbook, the Holy See's annual directory, relegating the titles to a footnote, calling it Vicar of Christ a historical title. While the previous yearbooks listed the title of Vicar of Christ and the name of the reigning pope under that title, this year's annual directory simply lists the name of Jorge Mario Bergoglio, the name of the man who became Pope Francis in 2013. Now, and then there is a comparison between the 2019 edition and the 2020 edition. Before I continue the article, the 2019, again, notice the difference. I'll put the little picture so you can see it on the screen here as well. So it says Vicar in Italian, Vicar of Jesus Christ. And it says Successor of the Prince of the Apostles, Supreme Pontiff of the Universal Church. These are essential titles. Primate of Italy, and the other ones are not as essential, not dogmatic, but Successor of Prince of the Vicar of Jesus Christ, number 1. Successor of the Prince of the Apostles, number 2. Supreme Pontiff of the Universal Church. These are essential for the papacy. And then after it lists them, it says Jorge Mario Bergoglio. And then it gives a little biography about him. Now my question is, where's the name Francis? He hasn't even called himself Francis. His papal name is just Jorge Bergoglio. In the 2013, apparently, in the 2012, Benedict calls himself Benedict XVI, not Ratzinger, Joseph Ratzinger. From what I've read, and from the 2013, he still called himself Francis, Bishop of Rome. Here it is just in the 2019, it does say Vicar of Jesus Christ, and then he doesn't give his papal name. It's just Jorge Mario Bergoglio. Now in the 2020 edition, all of the titles which give him authority, none of them exist. So what is it? Just Jorge Mario Bergoglio. Born in Buenos Aires, and gives a little biography. And then a line, a break, and then it's like historical notes. Vicar of Jesus Christ, Successor of the Prince of the Apostles, Supreme Head of the Universal Church. As if they don't, it's a little historical notes. Yeah. But what's important is my name. I am Jorge. Hear me roar. I am Jorge. Hear me meow. Anyways, now they quote Cardinal Gerhard Müller in the German. You can read it, or in the little translation here. And he says, this is an embarrassment. I mean, how this, Cardinal Müller says, this is just a directory. It doesn't have a theological, magisterial authority, but he's talking like a little bureaucrat, not like a Christian. This has authority. Francis says, first of all, he stops calling himself Francis. He's calling himself Jorge Mario Bergoglio. Don't even call me Francis. Doesn't even say Bishop of Rome. It just simply says, right away, doesn't even say, it just goes into his biography. And so it is like everything Francis does. He doesn't go explicitly and stand in the and talk to people. Says, I am not the Vicar of Christ. I am not the successor of the Prince of the Apostles. I am not the Supreme Pontiff of the Universal Church. He doesn't say that face to face. He is double-faced. That's why he will remove it from the yearbook, put it away as a historical footnote, like being the Vicar of Christ, the successor of Peter, the Supreme Pontiff of the Universal Church, does not matter. It is not essential to who he is. He is telling us he is not the Vicar of Christ. He is telling us he is not the successor of Peter. He is telling us he is not the Supreme Pontiff of the Universal Church. Maybe we should take him at his word. Remember, he never wanted to call himself Pope. He doesn't live in the Pontifical Palace. There's on my video with Francis proselytism versus evangelization. He's talking with the Jesuits from Mozambique or something, and he recalls an incident that when he walked into he was taking to take possession of the papal apartments. He said when he went in, it's very humble. The apartment is big, but he felt like a voice telling him not to stay there. Like he shouldn't be there. I can't remember the exact words I quoted him. You can watch the video and see exactly what he said. But basically it's like maybe God is telling him you don't belong in the papal apartments. Get out of here, Francis Jorge Mario Bergoglio, who doesn't want to be called the Vicar of Christ or the successor of Peter, or the Supreme Pontiff of the Universal Church. So, of course, Cardinal Muir says, like, these are essential titles, which, of course, they're in the Holy Scriptures. Without them, there is no Catholic Church. Might as well have our autocephalous churches. Each church has their own little patriarch or archbishop rooting a bunch of other bishops in a territory, and that's it. Why do we need him? Anyways, Cardinal Muir says, no pope or ecumenical council could, with reference to their highest authority over the church, do away with the primacy of the episcopacy or the sacraments or reinterpret them in their essence. But that's exactly what is happening, Cardinal Gerhard Müller. All right, so now let's continue, because now we have to discuss a few things. And I have a picture of I'll put it up, you can see it. Francis, the 2018. So up to the 2018, he still called himself Francis. So the Catholic hierarchy from the Pontifical Yearbook 2018. And it says Francis, Bishop of Rome, Vicar of Jesus Christ, Jorge Mario Bergoglio, and gives the rest of it. Now, in the 2019, we have Jorge Mario Bergoglio. I don't see where even the Francis Bishop of Rome says. Maybe it's on a different page. I don't see it, but supposedly he calls himself Bishop of Rome. But I don't even see it here. I just see Jorge Mario Bergoglio. Oh, this is the 2020 edition. And his biography when he was born and so forth. And then it says historical titles, Vicar of Jesus Christ, Successor of the Prince of the Apostles, Supreme Pontiff of the Universal Church, which are essential. And so I don't even see the name Francis there. I just see Jorge Bergoglio. Even in the 2019 version, it says Vicar of Jesus Christ. Where is Francis? I don't even see it. Successor of Peter, blah, blah, blah. Servant of the servants of God, Jorge Mario Bergoglio. All right, Jorge, if that's what you want. And we should remember, Jorge Bergoglio doesn't want to be called Pope, just the Bishop of Rome, maybe even preferably the bishop dressed in white, whoever he may be, who looks like the Pope. Now, he renewed his Argentine passport and identity card. And in him, he does not call himself Pope Francis. No, he calls himself by his beloved name, Jorge Mario Bergoglio. And why would you renew your Argentine passport? Aren't you now the Bishop of Rome, the head of Vatican City? You are the citizen of the Vatican. You are the king, the sovereign of the Vatican. You don't need your Argentine passport. But shows you how what's the word? How secular, how his mind is. He doesn't think like a pope. He doesn't think like a Catholic. You are supposed to be the Vicar of Christ. That's it. This is your position till your dying day. You're not going to go to Argentina and, sell potatoes over there anymore. Now, let's look at what the Catechism of the Catholic Church says. Because we're going to go through a few points. Benedict XVI's renunciation, whether it was valid or not, very briefly, because I have videos on that. Number 2, Francis's election and the conclave, whether that was valid or not. Again, very briefly, because I have a video on his election. Number 3, the letters, did Francis, if he was elected Pope validly, and Benedict is not Pope at all, did Francis fall from the pontificate through pertinacious, public, obstinate heresy? Yes or no? Because that was an accusation in 2019 Easter against him. And number 4 is what he did now. The renunciation of the titles of Vicar of Christ, Jesus Christ, Successor of the Prince of the Apostles, Head, Supreme Pontiff of the Universal Church. Is this a denial of who he is or a rejection of the pontificate? And then a few possible solutions to this dilemma. But before we get into that, very quickly, from the Catechism of the Catholic Church, the new Catechism, not some traditionalist catechism written by, overseen by Cardinal Ratzinger under Pope John Paul II. So in section 882, it says, the Pope, Bishop of Rome, and Peter's successor, this is essential, is, now quoting Vatican II, is the perpetual and visible source and foundation of the unity, both of the bishops and the whole company of the faithful. Again, continuing with Vatican II, for the Roman Pontiff, listen to this line, by reason of his office as Vicar of Christ and as pastor of the universal, of the entire church, has full, supreme, and universal power over the whole church, a power which he can always exercise unhindered. That's from Vatican II. So where is his power? The Roman Pontiff, how? By reason of what? His office as what? Vicar of Christ and pastor of the entire church, so Supreme Pontiff of the Universal Church and successor of Peter. That's the Catechism of the Catholic Church, quoting Vatican II. So if you're not the Vicar of Christ, if you're relegated as a historical title, so it's not essential to your office, and it's successor of the Apostle Peter, as again is a historical title, and not as Supreme Pontiff of the Universal Church, again as a historical title, then who are you? You are nothing. You are nothing. Now, continuing with the Catechism of the Catholic Church, section 936, the Lord made St. Peter the visible foundation of his church. I have a video on the One True Church. Not too many people watch it. I don't know why. It's an excellent video if I say so myself. And it shows us that the Vatican II still defined the Catholic Church as the one and only true Church of Christ, founded upon Peter and his successors and the bishops who are in unity with him. Anyways, the Lord, and again, my video again on truth does not change. This is it's three hours long. Just watch it in sections. But again, it counters some of the stuff coming out of the Vatican, because truth does not change, quoting Vatican II and the post-Vatican II popes. Anyways, section 936, the Lord made St. Peter the visible foundation of his church. He entrusted the keys of the church to him. And as I've seen in my other videos, I have pictures of the Coptic Orthodox churches. The icon of St. Peter is always holding the keys. He is the only apostle holding the keys from the Coptic Orthodox Church. So it says here, he entrusts the keys of the church to him, the bishop to him, the bishop of the Church of Rome, successor of St. Peter, as head of the College of Bishops, the Vicar of Christ, and pastor of the Universal Church. These three are essential titles, not titles, but the essence of the Roman Pontiff. It is his essence. Without these, he is just a bishop. And it quotes the Code of Canon Law, section 331. So who he is? So, and Canon 331, Code of Canon Law. Again, not the traditional real Code of Canon Law of 1917, based on the ancient code, large body of canon law of the Western Church, but of the 1917. So it condensed them into a solid, thick volume. This is the Mickey Mouse 1983 version. And Canon 331 says, the bishop of the Roman Church, in whom continues the office. Now notice, remember this word, the office, the office, the office, because Benedict XVI did not resign the office, but the exercise of the office, the ministry instead of the office. But anyways, we'll get to that in a second. So the bishop of the Roman Church, in whom continues the office, given by the Lord uniquely to Peter, the first, so Prince of the Apostles, the first of the Apostles, and as you see it in the New Testament, Peter is always named first, even though he was not the first called. Andrew was before Peter. Yet Peter is always listed first among the apostles. Anyways, so again, I'm going to read Canon 331 again. The bishop of the Roman Church, in whom continues the office given by the Lord uniquely to Peter, the first of the apostles, and to be transmitted to his successors, is the head of the College of Bishops. So is the Vicar of Christ and is pastor of the Universal Church on earth. So the Bishop of Rome, the successor of Peter, is the Vicar of Christ. It's not a historical title. It is his essence. By virtue of his office, again, he possesses supreme, full, immediate, and universal ordinary power in the church, which he is always able to exercise freely. Canon 332. And actually, before we get to that, I want to quote here Cardinal Mueller again in the German newspaper. He says, this is just 1 second here. Okay, here we go. So Cardinal Mueller, I don't know where I put it, but anyway, he says, Cardinal says, Jesus Christ did not choose the Bishop of Rome. He did not appoint a Bishop of Rome. No, he chose Peter as his vicar. He is the rock. Christ is the rock, and Peter is sharing in the one rock. He put his power in Peter, so it's Peter's successor. So if Peter died in, I don't know, in Alexandria, then the successor of the Bishop of Alexandria would be the Vicar of Christ on earth. But Peter died, his final resting place was in Rome. That's why even from St. Irenaeus, Rome is placed as the head church because of the Saints Peter and Paul, and for the death of St. Peter right there being his final see. That's why even Antioch is not considered to be the head of the church. Even St. Ignatius of Antioch looks to Rome, even though he is the successor of Peter as well. So Gerhard Müller says, look, Peter didn't choose the Bishop of Rome. He chose Peter. He chose the successor of Peter. So you can't just be a Bishop of Rome with removing the essence of who you are. Vicar of Christ, successor of the Prince of the Apostles, Supreme Pontiff of the Universal Church. So Canon 332, number 1 says, the Roman Pontiff obtains full and supreme power in the Church by his acceptance of legitimate election. So the election is illegitimate, and he's proclaimed Pope. He's not Pope, really. Together with the episcopal consecration, therefore. Okay, so this is 332. Now, we're going to go into Benedict XVI. Before we do that, in the same canon, section 2 says, if it happens, so now we're going to go through Benedict XVI renunciation very quickly, because I have a video on, there's a Cardinal Burke, there was an online interview with him, and Peter Coffin asked him about certain questions people have about the resignation of Benedict, the election of Francis, and I go through that, and I'll quote extensively from Benedict, from Gonswein, his personal secretary, from what they said, and what conclusions we could reach about the validity of this so-called renunciation. So section 2 of the same canon, canon 332, number 2 this time, it says, if it happens that the Roman Pontiff resigns his office, the munus, the office, it is required for validity that the resignation be made freely and properly manifested, but not that it is accepted by anyone. So it has to be free. And if you read Taylor Marshall's book Infiltration, you'll see there were all kind of machinations. The Vatican leaks, the shutting down of the money, the monetary system in the Vatican, all the banking machines stopped working, and the threatening of Benedict by Martini to resign. A whole bunch of things were happening. The gay mafia, all of that was happening in the Vatican. And the day Benedict resigns, boom, the money machines start operating again. Accident? Was that a free resignation? And in my video of the election of Pope Francis, you'll see actually cardinals saying, after they hear Benedict's reasons, so-called reasons for his resignation, they say, we want to find out what the real reason is. Cardinals were saying that. So anyways, Canon 1885 says, 185 says, so this is so because there is theologians saying, I'll read Canon 185 first. The title emeritus can be conferred upon a person who loses an office by reason of age or of resignation, which has been accepted. Now, that's why they have Bishop Emeritus of whatever, Texas or Toronto or whatever. But theologians in 2013 from the Pontifical University warned Benedict that he cannot say Emeritus, Pope Emeritus. He can say maybe Bishop of Rome Emeritus. Even that was problematic, because there can be only one pope. So you cannot still call yourself pope, but a resigned pope. But you're still pope. A pope being successor of Peter. You can't be a living successor of Peter. Anyways, but I'm going to ignore the discussion right now. Canon 188 says, a resignation made out of grave fear, that is inflicted unjustly or out of malice, substantial error or simony is invalid by the law itself. So if a pope or a bishop or whatever is resigned an office out of fear, which we discussed briefly, out of a substantial error. Now this is the place where Benedict wanted to, according to Gonswine, expand the Petrine ministry, make it into a collegial ministry with the contemplative and an active members of the same ministry. And that's why Gonswine himself, and that's why Gonswine says Pope Benedict did not abandon what? The office. In 2016, watch my video with Berg there, with 2016 says, Francis did not resign the office, did not abandon the office, something which would have been impossible for him after his irrevocable acceptance of the office. So what did he actually renounce? He renounced the active exercise of the ministry. Or as Benedict himself says, he gave away the power of governance. And Benedict XVI says, regarding his renunciation, he says in one of his last audiences, he says that his renunciation does not revoke this, referring back to his irrevocable acceptance of the office in 2005. So what is the juridical status of his so-called renunciation? And I'm not just some amateur saying that. Dom Nicola Books called out one of the, he was at the Pontifical Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith, very highly respected theologian, says we need to examine the juridical validity of this renunciation of Benedict XVI, whether it was partial or complete. Because if it was partial, it would be invalid. And I will leave it at that. And I mean, Antonio Socci himself, I did a review of his book, Benedict is Still Pope, and he talks about all these difficulties with the so-called resignation of Benedict XVI. Even there was a professor of canon law in 2013 talked about, analyzed on 10, 12, 15 pages, I don't remember now. His name is Stefano Violi. He's a canon law professor at the Pontifical University. He analyzed the Latin text of the renunciation of Benedict XVI, and he reaches the conclusion that renunciation of Benedict XVI was not based on Canon 332, number 2, but on the supreme authority of the Pope. He can do basically whatever he wants. But his conclusion is that Benedict XVI did not resign the office, the munus, but the exercise of that office, the ministry, the ministerium. And that's a professor of canon law at a Pontifical University. Anyways, so you can watch the video with more details on that. Now that's what Benedict did. So is Benedict Pope? So Francis is not Pope? Or did Benedict somehow basically allow a Pope, a Bishop of Rome, to exercise the ministry? Well, in reality, he's still Pope, but in his mind, there's somehow it is possible to have an active Pope and a contemplative Pope. And you see Francis constantly, whenever he chooses, cardinals, he brings them to Francis, he kisses to Benedict, Francis bows down and kisses Benedict's ring, and he presents all the newly elected cardinals to Benedict, and they greet him, and he blesses them all. So in a sense, like Francis saying, look, Benedict, here are the cardinals, basically confirm my choices, and now we have valid cardinals. Anyways, number 2. So these are the problems facing the church these days. Number 2, we have the validity of the election of Jorge Mario Bergoglio. Is he Pope? Was his election actually even valid? That is the question. Now, watch my video on the election of Pope. Actually, here's the first one, was Secret of Benedict with Antonio Socci, which I talked about. And I have a full review on that book. The book Infiltration, again, which I have two videos on it because the video got cut off, so I put them on two. Maybe I'll combine them into one, but it'll be a long one. Then the election of Francis, which I do a full review on in this book, and written by a Bergoglian, a worshipper of Jorge Mario Bergoglio, who thinks he is, Christ's second coming, the new apostle, the coming of the Messiah. And I have a very brief review, not of the whole book, but just a section, Keys of the Kingdom, where it talks about how the British government conspired with Cardinal Murphy O'Connor to get Francis elected, Jorge Bergoglio elected as Cardinal, so as Pope. Now, for the validity of the election, I mean, there's different difficulties which Peter Coffin asked Cardinal Burke about. First was the St. Gallen Mafia. And Cardinal Daniels, one member of the St. Gallen Mafia, he himself called it a mafia. And that they worked for years to get somebody elected which they preferred, they liked. And one member of the mafia, the head of the mafia, the biggest mafioso amongst them, was the Patriarch of Venice, I believe, Martini, Carlo Martini, a Jesuit who hated Benedict XVI, who actually told Benedict to resign if he couldn't reform the Curia, as if this is what he really cared about. Martini was their preferred candidate, and after Martini was gone, Jorge Bergoglio became their preferred candidate. So there was this conspiracy of the St. Gallen Mafia. Now, that was one thing. Number two, there was the extra vote in the Conclave. Well, according to the Constitution by John Paul II, amended by Benedict XVI, gives you the laws, the way the election of the Roman Pontiff proceeds. What was allowed was basically one vote the first day if it happens in the afternoon, then the cardinals retire, and every day thereafter there was allowed 2 in the morning, 2 at night, in the afternoon. That's it. No further votes were allowed. Now what happened is, first day, Francis was gaining votes. First day, of course, no vote. Scola came in first or something. I have more full details of it in the review of the book, Election of Pope Francis. Second day, again, first vote, nothing. Second vote, nothing. Again, Francis was advancing. Jorge Mario Bergoglio was advancing. He was seated on the right side of Christ, like in the book says. He was seated on the side of the just. Anyways, so, and then they went on their breaks. The cardinals came back. The third vote of the day happened. Again, no decision. Fourth vote of the day, which was the fifth vote of the election. Now, what happened at that point was, when the scrutineers, the cardinals counting the ballots, noticed there was one extra ballot. So apparently a cardinal put 2 pieces of paper instead of 1. So you can watch my video. I have a longer explanation in it. But basically what they did was like, okay, well, we'll throw these guys away. The Constitution actually says, let me say it again. So this is the fourth ballot, fourth and final ballot. So they counted it before they opened them and read like the names. So they said, oh, okay, we have 1 extra. Okay, so throw these guys away, vote again. Constitution says, it does say vote again, but at the same time it says there's only 4 maximum votes per day. So what did they do? They did 5 votes, a 5th vote on the same day, in all appearances in violation of the Constitution governing the election of the Roman Pontiff. And that was the theme of Antonio Socci's first book on the subject, It Is Not Francis, which is not available in English. I hope it gets published. But this is what happened. He was elected on the 6th ballot on the 2nd day, which is in violation of the Constitution. So people will say, well, they threw them, the 4th vote was null and void, so it is really a 4th vote of the same day. The Constitution doesn't say it was null and void. It just says vote a second time, immediately again. and it says only 4 votes. But Jorge was elected on the 5th vote. So, and the Constitution itself says, if any of these provisions in this Constitution happen in violation of what happened, then this election is null and void. I think it says somewhere as well that if the cardinals agree that it's okay, then it's okay. So this is, again, it's a doubt. Was the election valid or not? Was Benedict's renunciation valid or not? Because if Benedict was still Pope, if his renunciation was invalid, then it doesn't matter what happened at the election. Francis is, at most, the auxiliary bishop of Rome. He is not the principal bishop. Let's see. Now, and as I said, so now let's go point 3. In Easter 2019, very many prominent clergy, amongst them the British theologian Aidan Nichols, wrote an open letter to the bishops of the Catholic Church. And I have like 4 or 5 videos on it. Unfortunately, the first 2 videos, I go through everything in this document. I encourage you to read it. I'll place a link to it. Anyways, unfortunately, the first 2 videos are very low tone of voice, so you'd have to maybe play it on TV and turn up the volume to the max to hear what I'm saying. Part 3, 4, and 5 are pretty good. Anyways, so they basically accuse Pope Francis of the delict, of the crime of heresy. And they go through, I don't remember how many points now, basically originating from the document Amoris Laetitia. And so not only his words, his actions, and even the one where he talks about all religions are created equal. God willed falsehood when he signed this document with the Sheikh al-Azhar, the Grand Imam, the Imam of al-Azhar in Egypt. That God willed heresy, God willed Islam, God willed paganism, God willed Satanism, because in the same wise way as he willed the different sexes. It's not like a permissive will. It is an active desired will of God. So God wills something which violates commandment number 1. Not just allowed it, but actually willed it. Anyways, so they accused him of pertinacious, obstinate, public heresy. And they called upon the bishops to act and declare Francis to have lost the pontificate and to have fallen from the pontificate. Now, there's different assumptions. We can assume Benedict resigned validly. Okay. We can assume Francis got elected validly. Okay. Now, did he fall from the pontificate for public pertinacious heresy? You have to read the whole document, and for me, it is rock solid. But again, I am nobody. But these theologians presented their case with footnotes, with references, and it seems to me rock solid. It is the cowardice of different bishops who are afraid to face reality, including Burke, Schneider, Müller, Serra, and others. Braunmüller. So anyways, so who says, like, first of all, Cardinal Robert Bellarmine himself says that for pertinacious heresy, a pope falls from the pontificate. So I'm just going to look here for something. Okay, now, we have different authorities. We have, in 2013, there's an article again about the vacancy of the Roman see, in which the Father Gianfranco Girlanda, S.J., Jesuit, of the Pontifical Gregorian University, writing March 2nd, 2013, about the vacancy of the Roman see and how does it happen. And of course he says, death, insanity, which is proved, he gives like 3 or 4 resignation, valid resignation, or pertinacious heresy, defection from the Catholic faith, or schism against the church. And he says, for schism or pertinacious heresy, the Roman pontiff falls from the pontificate ipso jure, by the law itself. Nobody deposes the Pope, but he deposes himself. By the law itself, he is deposed. And all that is left, he says, is that at least the cardinals in Rome, or at least the Roman clergy, would declare the fact of the fall from the pontificate. That's in March 2nd, 2013, from the Gregorian Pontifical University, a Jesuit, a professor saying that. And then we have Dom Nicola books, Cardinal Brandmüller, Cardinal Burke. All three state explicitly that a pontiff, a Roman pontiff, and of course that goes for any ecclesiastical office, but now we're talking about the most important one, because the other offices, because somebody superior to them can go after them and depose them. So we can report a bishop, we can report a cardinal, we can report a patriarch to the Pope and have him declare his removal from office. He falls from the office, but the Pope, the superior, would declare him so. But now we're talking about the Pope himself. What are we going to do? He is the supreme. There is nobody above him except Jesus Christ. So basically the Pope deposes himself. So as I said, Dom Nicola books, Cardinal Brandmüller, Cardinal Burke, themselves, all three of them said that a Pope, the Roman pontiff, through explicit pertinacious heresy, defection from the Catholic faith, public and willful and pertinacious. He is warned, he is corrected, yet he refuses the correction. He refuses to deny the error. He adheres to the error explicitly. Then he loses the pontificate ipso facto, by the mere fact. No declaration is required. But again, they say, at least some cardinals, at least bishops, would declare the fact that he has fallen from the pontificate. Now, there was my review of the book of, it's behind me here, but anyways, for Father Aidan Fortescue, about the papacy up to the year 451. And in it, he says there's like some stupid popes who made theological errors, who made theological mistakes. As long as it is not, they could be theologically ignorant, which one can say of Francis, for example, even though he was apparently a professor at Catholic universities. He says a pope could be theologically ignorant, so he would make theological errors. But this is, of course, does not render him a heretic and deposed. And no, only when somebody has been warned about his error, told to correct his ways, he adheres to error publicly and refuses to change his mind, then the fall from the papacy happens. So I'll just quote a couple of codes of canon law. Canon 188 of the traditional Code of Canon Law, the 1917 Code of Canon Law, affirms that espousing heresy constitutes tacit resignation. So the quote from the Code of Canon Law says, any office, so that includes the office of the Supreme Pontiff, the office of the Vicar of Christ, becomes vacant. The office itself becomes vacant upon the fact, de facto, and without any declaration, by tacit resignation, recognized by the law itself, if a cleric, and a pope is a cleric, publicly defects from the Catholic faith. That's number 4. And in the new Code of Canon Law, 194 says, the following are removed from an ecclesiastical office. Again, the papacy is an office, as we saw before, by the law itself. So in this case, that's why Father Gianfranco says de jure, by the law. In the Old Code, it's by the fact, recognized by the law. And the Old Code codifies the ancient immemorial teaching of the Church. So in number 2 it says, if a person is removed from, the following are removed from an ecclesiastical office by the law itself. So nobody needs to declare them removed. Number 2, a person who has publicly defected from the Catholic faith or from the communion of the Church, so became a schismatic. And number 3, it says, now this is the caveat in this one, the removal mentioned in number 2 or 3 can be enforced. Not that it doesn't happen, but can be enforced only if it is established by the declaration of the competent authority. But there is nobody above the Pope, so who is the competent authority? That's why the theologians, including the canon lawyers and canon law professors, say at least a declaration of some cardinals or the clergy of Rome to the fact of the defection from the faith. So commenting on this code of canon law, Professor Juan Ignacio Arrieta of the University of Navarra talks about the competent authority. So that the action by a competent authority referred to in the second paragraph of this canon is declarative and becomes necessary not to cause a vacancy of the right to the office, but to juridically enable the person's removal to be requested, and consequently the installment of a new office holder. So we need some kind of a declaration, otherwise it'd be anarchy. I can say he's not Pope. This guy might say, no, he's Pope, but he's ignorant. That guy, he says, no, he's not ignorant, he's perfectly orthodox. So we need a declaration of something, of the fact. So we are in uncharted territory here. So what is the situation? What's the situation we're in? We can do nothing. We can only pray and intercede for God, for Jesus Christ, the head of the Catholic Church, the head of his kingdom on earth, which is the one Holy Catholic and Apostolic Church, governed by the true successor of Peter and the bishops in communion with him. And this church will last to the end of days, and will always have a successor to Peter. So now there is no easy solutions. There are no solutions. Only God has a solution. Because if we have absolutely no doubt about the orthodoxy of Francis, about him still being Benedict truly resigned, Francis is truly validly elected, Francis is just ignorant of the faith, so he's not pertinacious in heresy, he's trying to do his best, so everything is good, I guess. That's one solution. Now, for those who have doubts about maybe the resignation of Benedict, maybe the election of Francis, maybe the continuation of the pontifical office by Francis, or did he fall from the office? Or his latest declaration, Francis saying, relegating as historical titles of no importance, titles which are essential to who he supposedly is, the Vicar of Jesus Christ, the successor of the Prince of the Apostles, the Supreme Pontiff of the Universal Church. If he basically tacitly rejects these titles, therefore he has rejected the pontificate himself. He is no longer Pope by his own will. He excommunicated himself. He has resigned the office, because it is the office of the Vicar of Christ, as canon law we have seen already. So this is another thing. So what is it? What's the situation now? Now, now with what's happening with the world, with all this disease, plague, death, the shutting down of churches, is apocalyptic. Whether this plague is real or manufactured, whether these people are truly dying of the virus or complications added to by the virus from cancer and heart disease and diabetes and whatever else. And this is just the final stroke, the coup de grace, the straw that broke the camel's back. So instead of dying in 5 months, they die in a week. Anyways, but this is not the point. So with all these things happening, real or not real, imagined or a propaganda, if this, what is happening is apocalyptic in a sense. You see Francis by himself in the St. Peter's Square. The churches are closed. The people are watching masses on television. It is scary. So what could happen? What are the possibilities? Few possibilities. One, the best solution of all is that Pope Benedict and Francis, the Bishop of Rome, or should I say Jorge Bergoglio, the Bishop of Rome, both die at about the same time, or exactly the same time, or just before and just after. So there's no chance of another Pope being elected. So both of them are dead before another Pope is elected. So if that happens, that'll be the best solution. Now we remove the doubt whether Benedict resigned or not resigned, whether Francis is validly elected, fell from the pontificate, rejected the pontificate. It doesn't matter. They're both dead now. Now it sounds very harsh, but this is the best solution. They both die, and the cardinals, which are valid because Benedict basically approves them. They come and visit him. They take his blessing. He basically approves these cardinals. They are validly elected cardinals, and hopefully God this time will give us a pope according to his own heart, even though the cardinals are stacked against tradition. Yet miracles do happen. Maybe this disaster is happening in the world, and the church will drive them to choose what is right. And notice this collapse, this calamity is happening on the 7th anniversary of the election of Jorge Mario Bergoglio. Got elected 7 years ago, March 13th, 2013. Now March 13th, 2020, and Rome is shut down, the world is shut down, the churches are shut down. After 7 years. Very significant number in Scripture. Anyway, so that's the best solution. They're both dead, and we get a pope with no doubts. Another solution, less bad, but not too bad. Pope Benedict dies, passes on to his rewards. He reposes in the Lord. So Francis is left. Now, validity, not validity, we'll have to put up with him until he passes away, and then the next pope would be again a valid pope. Again, we can say supply jurisdiction to Francis to appoint cardinals. We can say that. So the next pope after Francis would be valid, and okay, end of story. Now the worst possible solution. That would be the worst of the worst. For those who have doubts. For those who have no doubts, then hey, everything's good, everything's great. Francis dies, Benedict dies, who cares? We have a new pope. Now the worst possible solution for anybody who has doubts about the situation is that Francis dies first, Benedict is still alive, and the cardinals elect another pope. Even the most conservative, even the most traditional, or it could be somebody like Tagle, which would be probably even worse than Francis. Those who have doubts will have doubts about this new pope. And if it is even worse than Francis, the situation will be a disaster, because he'll probably be younger, So he's going to be there. Pope Benedict will die, and now we're stuck with somebody for another 10, 20 years. And for those who have doubts, are unsure. But this is the worst case scenario, and I don't think God would allow such a situation to happen. And if it does happen, then maybe one has to say, well, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Benedict did truly resign. Maybe Francis was validly elected. Anyways, so this is the worst situation in my point of view. So that's basically all I have to say about this. So we see this confusion in the Church of God, this confusion in the world, this wrath which has befallen the Church and the world. In Revelation 6, God tells us, he warns us, because God gets angry. God punishes. He punishes his children first because he loves his children and wants them to return. And he punishes those who spit in his face as well. Revelation 6:16 tells us, well, we have to be aware, to beware of the wrath of the Lamb and the one who sits on the throne. Because people will say, hide me, cover me, because I cannot withstand their wrath. The wrath of God is real. The wrath of the Lamb is real. We cannot spit in the face of God and expect to be rewarded and to be coddled and to be loved. We have to have holy fear again in our hearts and ask God for mercy, that the calamity which has befallen the world might be removed, that his wrath may be removed from his church, and that truth and beauty and orthodoxy and tradition might once again be fully restored. And we have a Pope who will restore all things in Christ, who will restore the ancient rites of the Church, who are ancient liturgies of the Church, or the ancient faith of the Church, the ancient discipline of the Church, and preach Christ crucified, the one and only Savior of mankind. That's it. That's all. Hope you like this video. Please like, please subscribe. Please pray for the salvation of souls. Please pray that Christ will come to the rescue of his kingdom and restore sanity, holiness, and hope in all of our hearts. That's it. That's all. Take care. I'll see you next time.